welcome in right now City Journal's senior editor and author of Shakedown, the continuing conspiracy against the American taxpayer, Stephen Malanga. Hey, Steve, good to talk to you.
Hi, how are you?
Good. It's been a while, welcome to the show. Okay, first of all, let me work backwards. Before we find out or talk about how we got to where we are or how Detroit got to where it is, are you and I going to have to pony up for this? Is the taxpayer going to get hit on a federal level and or on I would hope it'd be a state level first, but who's going to pay for this?
Well, first of all, the taxpayers of Michigan have been paying for it. They've been supporting Detroit for a long time using the state's financing mechanisms and other things. The issue about a federal bailout is very interesting. There is not a lot of appetite in Washington right now, certainly not among Republicans, but also among moderate Democrats who come from states where the citizens feel that their states have been fiscally responsible. There's not a lot of appetite among them either for bailing out Detroit. I will say that after President Obama was elected last November, one of the city council people in Detroit did say, well, 90% of the voters in Detroit voted for Obama, and he better bail us out. So that is the attitude in the city. I'm not sure there's a taste for that in Washington right now.
Yeah, and so let me ask you, the Congress would have to approve a bailout, right? I mean, this president's done so much on his own, he can't unilaterally just sign an order and bail them out with the X amount of billions of dollars, can he?
Not in the way that this city has such problems that it would need a lot of money. I mean, there are certain what I call backdoor things that the federal government has done. If you go back and look even at the federal bailout packages of 2009 and stuff, they specifically weren't aimed at cities like Detroit, but they did a lot of things like creating certain kinds of Build America bonds and things like that backed by the federal government that actually gave places like Detroit the ability to at least keep going for a while. But to do a kind of full-on bailout of a city that owes this much money, no, I think you would have to go to Congress for that, and I don't think it's likely to pass.
No, I would doubt that. Stephen, is this Greece? I mean, is this just a small version of what happened to Greece? And how concerned are you that there'll be some kind of domino effect here, and we'll see more cities go the same way?
Well, first of all, Detroit has really been a dysfunctional government for decades. And it's important to understand this, that Detroit in 1974 elected a mayor, Coleman Young, who was basically a radical trade unionist who basically went to war with the institutions in Detroit, including municipal institutions that were essential to Detroit, like the police department. He cut the police department as crime was rising. Detroit became, essentially the most violent city in America. When Coleman Young was done after 20 years, Detroit's basic municipal institutions, the schools, the police, didn't work. And so businesses didn't want to locate there. People, particularly on the left, often talk about how, global transformation of manufacturing pushed jobs out of Detroit. But the truth of the matter is that America actually has as many automobile manufacturing jobs today as it had in 1970. They're just not in Detroit. They're in places like Kentucky and Alabama. So Detroit really is a story of decades of bad government and of a belief that basically a local government could not save itself because Detroit was constantly asking for bailouts from the federal government, constantly asking for more money and more programs. That's been the attitude for Detroit for decades.
Okay, is there another city that you think is headed down that same path, or maybe many cities that are headed down that same path here in the U.S.?
Well, it's very interesting. There are other cities like Chicago that have more economic resources than Detroit, but they are allowing essentially their retirement liabilities from the both pensions and health care to build up. And independent analysts who've looked, for instance, at Chicago's pension liabilities say there's no way they can ever pay this back. Right now, they're paying their current retirees out of their trust fund, but they owe so much in promises that they have real problems. They're just not problems that necessarily are going to result in insolvency tomorrow. What I think they are going to result in, and they're already resulting in, is higher taxes and fewer services. It's kind of like a new era we're in right now. You're not even paying higher taxes to get things like better roads and bridges or new schools. You're paying high taxes just to go into pensions.
Well, Stephen, and we got about a minute left, and we're talking to Stephen Malanga, City Journal senior editor here on the Steve Malzberg Show. The radical left, represented by the likes of MSNBC, host after host has been blaming, saying, see, this is what happens. This is what happens when you have a Republican philosophy, and this is what happens when you have a Republican governor, and this is what happens when you don't want to help a city and you let it try to work its own problems, et cetera, et cetera. But it's completely the opposite. The city has fallen apart because of unions, because of infrastructure failure, and just like you said, Coleman Young and then Kwame Kirkpatrick and all these kinds of things. It's just snowballed.
Well, and by the way, a Democratic governor of Michigan, Jennifer Granholm, in 2009, seized control of the city's school system because it was involved in dysfunctional.
Right.
So it's not just the Republican government.
I know. I'm just telling you what they say. Hey, Steve, thank you very much. Great talking to you, sir.
All right, take care.
Take care.